because
I'm back, baby.
I wanted to give this one a decent amount of time. This is one I certainly did not want to race through. So this is the general story around this is that Destiny 2's Lightfall expansion has not had the best start. It's come out. I just for reference, I have not played this at all. This is just what I've read. You'll get a first-hand experience of what it's like in a second from Will, I'm sure. But people generally seem very upset with this expansion. Can you explain why, Will?
Okay, Destiny 2. It's been a long and rocky road, obviously, but the last expansion and the way their live service model is set up is big expansions, like tent poling, smaller seasonal releases where you'll have a big 8-hour long FPS campaign, and then to keep people interested over the course of the year, you'll have smaller seasonal updates which kind of drip feed you the story over a course of like several months, right? And since the last expansion, which is called Witch Queen, was really good,
People
and then
people
the
really like
stuff
Witch Queen. That's what I'm reading. Yeah,
it was like you can't recommend Destiny now to people who haven't played Destiny. It's just impossible. But Witch Queen was like almost there, where I'm like, it sets up, even if you don't know the story, it sets up a fun villain, and it sets up fun characters, and then you go through a nice fun shooter campaign, right? In a fun location. There's lots of good cutscenes and fun combat to be had and stuff like that. And it's like, you can't tell people to play Destiny at this point, but it was like, oh, it was getting there.
It's close. It's really close.
So then fast forward to like whenever this got announced, and I think even people who the marketing for this expansion has been like overdrive, where like even people who don't give a shit about Destiny anymore were looking at some of these like trailers and being like, this is pretty good. And then combine that with everybody who's been playing Destiny for the last year going, Destiny's pretty good now. And I feel like it's sort of all combined. And couple that with, this was originally supposed to be the end of Destiny. This was supposed to be the final expansion for Destiny. And I think all of that sort of combined into everybody being really, really excited for Lightfall.
My equivalent of this was when I skipped World of Warcraft Legion, and I heard nothing from people. All I heard from people was that Legion was insane. World of Warcraft is back, baby. It's so fun. It's so good. You got to play the next expansion. And I did. It was Battle for Azeroth, and it fucking sucked. It didn't suck, but it was like. But I was like, thought this was insane.
Yeah. And the Bungie have like leaned into this. Like, obviously they have to because they're pushing them up. But like all the marketing has been, they've been quoted as saying like they want this to be their Infinity War. And at some point, they announced that like there's so much story and there's so many things we have to do to wrap this story up. We've split the last expansion in two, so we're going to do this one, which is like our Infinity War, and then next year we will release our end game.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Which is what a strong message that I feel. That sets up a really nice two-parter kind of story. What this actually is. When Infinity War came out and everybody went to see it, and then it leaves you on a cliffhanger, and which at some point is going to be answered in Marvel's Endgame, Avengers Endgame, and then in between those two, they released an Ant-Man movie, which nobody, I feel like it was like you go to see it thinking like, how's this going to tie into the big overarching story, and all it did, and it's like you're basically sat through an entire Ant-Man movie to watch the last after credits 5-second tease of what's coming next in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's kind of what this feels like. It opens on the big bad is finally here and he's fighting you. It's like a big dramatic reveal. It cuts to black, and then you go and do this 8-hour campaign in a place you don't care about with characters you don't know, fighting over a MacGuffin, but they never even bother to explain what it is that you're doing. There's two buzzwords that they use constantly. They say we need to get the veil and we need to stop the radial mast. And every cutscene is people throwing about those two MacGuffins, and not a single person, not even your character, goes, what is this? What am I doing
hang
here?
on a minute. What is
what
what
even
is this? You have to go to a Destiny 2 wiki or something and find out what the MacGuffin is.
And it's like I feel like it feels like this isn't the end game to this isn't the Infinity War to the end game. This feels like we didn't have the resources to actually put a proper expansion together. So this is a little side story because it's all we could scrape together in our resourced, starved studio, where it feels like we've been playing catch up with our own ideas and ambitions the entire life cycle of Destiny.
They don't have the budget to do the story proper, as they dive into a pool from the Sony sale, which was what? How many billions?
3 point whatever billion. Yeah.
That's a lot of money to count. To be fair, it takes a long time to count all that money.
It's all the gold they've been offloading off the Sony trucks. That's taken them all this time. Yeah, I don't know. It's just really disappointing because at the same time as this expansion kicks off, the new season kicks off. And by all accounts, the season stuff is pretty okay. It's like not fantastic because it's obviously smaller in scope because it's not a big tentpole release, so they can't assign as much resources to it. But that stuff's like okay. And it's just this expansion is such a kind of slap in the face for how much, because it's more expensive than any Destiny release has been before as well at
like
the same
40 50 quid
40 quid on Steam for the base version, which is like that's full price game.
That's a game. That's a game.
And it comes with like less than any of these expansions have ever had. There's not even any, all the gear is normally these expansions launch and you kind of expect like a fresh coat of paint, there's going to be new stuff to chase, and all of the gear that you're getting is all just recolored gear that you've seen before.
No, really?
Like, they didn't even make new items for this. Yeah.
Christ.
It's just sad. It's just sad.
These things go through so many people. Like, how does this happen? Like, it's a very successful franchise. Clearly it's worth billions because that's what Sony have purchased. Yeah, they purchased Bungie, but like, what are Bungie doing except for Destiny? Like, that's what Bungie are now. It's just insane to me that something like this can happen. I still love, I know you mentioned it, but it's the bit that always gets me is how the story has been leading up to this big bad, and he turns up and you leave.
Literally, that's what happens.
You just go somewhere else.
You go somewhere else to tell a completely contained story that doesn't really tie into the main plot in any way. But again, it's just like since the beginning, since Destiny 1, it feels like they've had all these grand ideas of what they want to do for this story, and they just don't, for whatever reason. Like, I assume it's not money at this point, but maybe it is. Maybe it's it's it feels like when Fortnite puts out a gun, right?
Yeah,
it's like they'll put out this like cartoony whatever little gun, and it's like it takes work, but it doesn't take. But it feels like when Destiny puts something out, they are like, we are going to, we're going to get original orchestras in to compose a theme so that when you find this gun in the world, it's going to play an orchestral that only that. And it's like they go so over the top in all of their all of the things that they do put out that they just can't. They're writing checks that they just can't cash.
I think it's just when the problem inherently is a lot of it is. It seems like a lot of the problems are story-based, and people are upset with the way the story's gone in the campaign and how there's been a big lead-up, and this is just, it hasn't panned out the way people were hoping. And a lot of these issues are clearly writing issues that would have happened a long time ago.
But I think it's a writing issue in the way that when a anime catches up to the manga, right? And then they have to go and tell a filler story, right? And it's like they're not going to get they don't have A+ writers who are on their filler arcs, right? So you kind of end up with these like little side stories that don't have any stakes or anything, but it's that kind of like they run out of road and they have to divert off into a little side road for a bit while the main story gets finished.
So do you think the answer?
Full Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Do you think the answer
Yeah.
is not to improve this, but to literally just like don't have it and just wait for?
They should
whatever
have just
the big
delayed.
finale
They
is?
should have just delayed. Yeah.
Well,
But it's a live service machine, and they can't stop
That's
it.
true.
You know?
Yeah, I think though it's been a common thing. It feels like in the last couple years at least, it's been common that a lot of writing for games has taken poor turns or just hasn't been the best.
I think writing for
There's-
games has never been very good.
There's
I-
been some sometimes.
I want to defend writing for games a moment because, like, obviously we don't need to go in the argument of like, oh, it's easy, blah blah blah, because we all know it's not. It's never as easy as it looks, right?
Yeah.
But when you're writing like a story layout and all this shit, a storyboard, and trying to convey it through the medium of video games, the story isn't just there, it's also how the game plays also tells the story, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
it's like, it's easy to be like, oh, the writing in this game is bad, but the story could still be fantastic. The game just played like shit and didn't play to the story's strengths. And I feel like that gets overlooked a lot.
True.
So I see the example of the story is bad a lot.
Do you have
I-
like an example? Just curious. I would kind of want to know what Sam's getting at here.
So I would have had one 2 weeks ago.
Maybe like World of Warcraft raids where it's like, oh, the story's there, but you have to play a raid, so a lot of people don't get the story. Potentially could be like that.
I've always thought an issue with story in games can be pacing, because you have to try to make a story work around a game which can take a very varied amount of time based on, like, you can.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
I think you're right. Oh, go on, Steve.
I was gonna say one shining example of a beacon of hope for that is Final Fantasy XIV, which does the stories very well. Like they know how to pace their stories.
Even
Well,
I,
with the latest
yeah.
expansions, at least.
The overarching stories
Yes.
are very good. I think the pacing of Final Fantasy XIV can be horrible. Where it's
yeah,
like,
I haven't played the new expansions, to be fair. I've heard they are very good.
there are certain parts in FF14's story where so much cool stuff is happening, and then so much not cool stuff will happen for a very long time. I'm like, can we go back to the cool bit? Because I was really into that.
Yeah, actually, I can see that. But I was just saying, like, Final Fantasy XIV does it where the story, like, their main story is like wrapped up within the expansion, like, and then within, from the leveling, and then Endgame starts a new story. That's always been like good. Where a lot of MMOs and other games don't do that. They're just like, oh, we're constantly teasing. You constantly never quite finish whatever boss.
I feel like even those stories at their best are kind of like a middling TV show.
No, it depends on what you're playing.
I feel like I've never played a game and been like gripped like I have in like an early Game of Thrones season or something.
I'll disagree to that. I've played a bunch of games that I think are yeah.
I've come to a idea to try and represent what I mean. Right?
Okay.
The Last of Us 1, fantastic, and I think half the reason why it did so well as a TV show was because the story was great, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think The Last of Us 2 will be bad. Because
the TV show.
The way the story was told in the video game was through more gameplay means than it was actual story beats.
Yeah, without spoiling anything, I know what you're getting at, yeah.
And I think it's still, like, I really wish I had a better example to come off the top of my head, but I feel like story and gameplay are very interwoven.
Yeah.
And one can carry the other. But I feel like very recently, video game writing is taking a massive hit when, in reality, gameplay has also been very lacking. But I feel like we're just so numb to that now that I feel like game writing is just a thing that we start shitting on instead.
Okay, yeah, I kind of see what you're getting at. I think writing doesn't. It's better now, but writing never used to sell video games, did it? It was all how it looked and how it played.
It was complimentary ages
So-
ago. Yeah.
So no studio when studios are running these big, like now I agree we have a lot of studios set aside a lot more budget for things like music, for instance, and writing. But it always used to be, they'd come up with a game and then they'd be like, "What's the story?" And it's like, "Oh, I don't fucking get a programmer on his lunch break to write us a narrative or something." You know what I mean? Like you'd write out some cutscenes or something. And I think you see that. I think when we look back, we remember the standout examples of really good storytelling.
Oh,
but on the whole,
100%. I
Yeah.
can't argue with
Always.
that.
Yeah.
on the whole, most of it is not as good because they just didn't budget for it.
It depends as well, because there are a lot of genres that exist that heavily rely on stories that you don't really play, Will. Like, Sam and I are both coming from this at an angle of we really enjoy a lot of stories from games. I think they're really good. When we've both played a lot of stuff like visual novels and Phoenix Wright, and
That's true.
Whereas, not to put everyone in a box, but you're the Halo guy. You like shooters,
I think in the current generation, we're getting
You're doing me a
better
bit of a disservice there,
stories
but yes, I
from
get you.
indie games than we are AAAs at the moment. There will
Yeah.
be standouts like God of War. I think God of War is a great example of
Yes.
story and gameplay working well together.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the moment we're relying on little indie games to give us that fix.
I mean, we'll revisit this.
don't know.
I agree.
We can revisit this when Final Fantasy 16 comes out. We'll see if it's any good.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing I want to ask then is because you what's my books? What's my gaming books?
I
Josh?
can't. I'll get banned on Twitch. For
Multiplayer
saying,
games.
I don't want to go anywhere near Steve's box.
yeah, but Steve's box is sticky and smells weird.
Wow, thanks.
All right, I'll push us along from Destiny. But yeah, mostly negative is the running theme of this podcast today.
Yeah, something.
I think that will go up once the initial outrage
It can't
has
go down,
gone and
right?
people are back. People are back to just well, it is more Destiny. Whichever
Yeah.
way you cut, the game is still fun. It's still Destiny. It's just, I think it's a combination of overhyping from the marketing for this, and the coming off of a really, really strong last expansion.
It's any expansion
just
for
the WoW
anything.
problem.
Any expansion that comes out, if it's not better than the first one, or if it's just bad, is always hated by its community.
And similarly, the reverse is true, where I think Witch Queen is good, but it's also overhyped because it came after an expansion that a lot of people regarded quite negatively.
Yeah, oh god, my expectations were so low. The fact that the game runs, good job.
Yeah, exactly.
Destiny is saved.